boys and girls. Thank you for coming to Grandma Reads. We are still reading The Little House Christmas Stories, and we are on chapter number 7. Horses and Candy. The next morning, snow was in the air. Hard bits of snow were leaping and whirling in the cold wind. Laura and Mary could not go out to play. Even Pa stayed inside, mending his boots. Ma read from the story called Millbank. Mary sewed and Laura played with Charlotte. That afternoon, when Carrie was asleep, Ma told them there would be one Christmas present after all. Mary and Laura could make a button string for Carrie. Laura and Mary climbed into their bed and turned their backs to Carrie. Ma brought them her button box. The box was full of pretty buttons. Ma had saved buttons since she was smaller than Laura, and she had buttons her mother had saved when her mother was a little girl. The box was almost full. There were blue buttons and red buttons, silver buttons and gold buttons, shiny black glass buttons, painted china buttons, and striped buttons. There were buttons that looked like juicy blackberries, and there were even one tiny dog head button. Laura squealed when she saw it. "Shh," Ma said, but Carrie did not wake up. Ma gave them all those buttons to make a button string for Carrie. Now Laura did not mind staying in the dugout. Outside, the cold wind made the tops of the trees rattle. Inside, Laura and Mary were warm and cozy, and they had a secret. It was hard to keep Carrie from finding out. Every day, Laura and Mary played with Carrie and gave her everything she wanted. They hugged her and sang to her. They tried to get her to sleep whenever they could. Then they worked on the button string. Mary had one end of the string and Laura had the other. They picked out the buttons they wanted and strung them on the string. They held the string out to look at it. They took off some buttons and put on others. Sometimes they took every button off and started all over again. They were going to make the most beautiful button string in the world. One morning, Ma told them that they must finish the button string. It was the day before Christmas. But they could not get Carrie to sleep. She ran and shouted. She skipped and sang. She did not get tired. Mary told her to sit still like a little lady, but she wouldn't. Laura let her hold Charlotte. Carrie bounced Charlotte up and down and flung her against the wall. Finally, Ma took Carrie in her lap and sang to her in a sweet, low voice. Laura and Mary sat perfectly still. Lower and lower, Ma sang. Carrie's eyes blinked till they shut. Quietly, Ma stopped singing. Carrie's eyes popped open. "More! More!" she shouted. Ma sang another song. At last, Carrie fell asleep. As quickly as they could, Laura and Mary finished the button string. Ma tied the ends together, and it was done. It was a beautiful button string. That evening after supper, when Mary was sound asleep, Ma hung her clean little pair of stockings from the edge of the table. Laura and Mary slipped the button string into one stocking. Then that was all. Mary and Laura began to climb into bed. "Aren't you girls going to hang your stockings?" Pa asked. "But I thought Santa Claus was going to bring us horses," Laura said. "Maybe he will," said Pa. "But little girls always hang up their stockings on Christmas Eve, don't they?" Laura did not know what to think. Neither did Mary. They had wished for nothing but horses, and they knew that horses would not fit into a stocking. Ma took 2 clean stockings out of the clothes box. Pa helped hang them beside Carrie's. Laura and Mary said their prayers and went to sleep, wondering. In the morning, Laura heard a fire crackling. She opened one eye a tiny bit. In the lamplight, she saw a bulge in her Christmas stocking. She yelled and jumped out of bed. Mary came running too. Inside Laura's stocking was a little paper package. Mary had one just like it. The packages were filled with candy. Laura had 6 pieces and Mary had 6. They had never seen such beautiful candy. It was too beautiful to eat. Some pieces were like ribbons. Some were short and round with colorful flowers in the middle. Some were perfectly round with stripes. Carrie had candy too. In one of her stockings were 4 pieces of that beautiful candy. In Carrie's other stocking was the button string. When Carrie saw it, her eyes and her mouth grew round. She squealed and grabbed it and squealed again. She sat on Pa's knee and looked at her candy and button string. She wriggled and laughed with joy. Laura and Mary were glad they had worked so hard on the button string. "Do you suppose there is anything for us in the stable?" Pa asked. "Dress as fast as you can, girls," Ma said. go to the stable and see what Pa finds." Laura and Mary put on their stockings and shoes. Ma wrapped their shawls under their chins. They ran out into the cold. Pa stood waiting in the stable door. He laughed when he saw Laura and Mary. Standing inside the stable were 2 horses. Their red-brown coats shone like silk. They had black manes and black tails. Their eyes were bright and gentle. Laura held out her hand. The horses put their velvety noses down and nibbled softly at it. Their breath was warm. "Well, Laura and Mary," said Pa, "how do you girls like your Christmas?" "Very much, Pa," said Mary, but Laura could only say, "Oh, Pa." "Who wants to ride the Christmas horses?" Pa asked. His eyes were shining. Laura could hardly wait. Pa lifted Mary up first and showed her how to hold onto the mane. He told her not to be afraid. Then Pa's strong arms swung Laura up into the air, and she was sitting on the other horse's big, gentle back. Everything outside was glittering now. The sun was shining on the snow and frost. Pa led the way down to the creek. The horses lifted their heads and took deep breaths. The cold whooshed out of their noses. Their velvety ears pricked forward, then back and forward again. Laura held onto the horse's mane and laughed. Mary laughed too, and then Pa's laugh rang out in the sparkling cold Christmas morning. They were all so happy. Carrie had her button string, the most beautiful button string in the world, and Laura and Mary were riding the Christmas horses. And if you come back again, we will read chapter number 8. We're almost done with the Christmas stories.